Geez, what more can we do to build a cultural life in our day to day? I think everybody needs to start with prayer. I think beyond that, I think for those of us who have suffered from lost motherhood and lost fatherhood, we have to understand that there are resources available. I know Carmen Claypool with Rachel's Vineyard has come all the way from Orlando. And those are people that they do nothing but minister to people who have experienced lost motherhood and lost fatherhood. And gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you this. I got asked this in that documentary, this documentary that's going to play on EWTN on Saturday night at 10 o'clock. I got asked by by Helmut. He said, how is it that there are 150,000 babies a day that are taken in the womb? How is it that there's still anybody out there that hasn't been affected, that doesn't have a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, an uncle, a cousin that has not been affected by it? That's what these people do. That's what Rachel's Vineyard does. They take people like me that are broken, and they have a weekend set up where they give them the healing and the resources that they need to just come out of the darkness. I listen, if I stand up in front of 1,000 people and give a talk similar to this, I can promise you that at least 10% of the men that are in the audience, at least 10% come up and say, when my wife and I got married at 17 years old, I forced her to take the pill for 4 years because we weren't ready. We had to make money. We had to build a living. We had to get a house. We had to do this, that, and the other. And then at the age of 21, when the husband finally grew a brain and said, no, I don't want you to take the pill anymore, they couldn't get pregnant. They couldn't get pregnant. That led to a divorce. So don't look at lost fatherhood as just hauling your girlfriend to the abortion clinic. It's much broader than that, people. If you've taken the pill before, I know this isn't familiar, and I'm probably going to have to popular, and I'm probably going to have to duck after I say this. You got in the way of God's procreative life that He wanted for you and your husband. You need to confess that. You do. I know that's not popular, and I'll duck once I see a shoe heading my way, but it's not popular, but we have to unite ourselves with God. So, and any other questions? I want to be a good steward of people's time. Mr. Lavery.
Jeff, I know you won't say that in our slides. Where's your next talk?
Yeah. I've been blessed to, I'm going to be with an organization. I'm going to be on the steps of the Supreme Court Friday at between 3 and 4 o'clock. Yeah. So that it won't be this long. I won't be boring people to death on Friday. They'll kick me out of there. The justices will come out and they'll say, get on out of here. We don't know where your accent's from, but it's neither Massachusetts nor Florida. So yeah, Supreme Court. But I don't like promoting this kind of, this is the documentary that I mentioned. This gentleman, the courage that he has to do what he did, to interview, he interviewed about 38 people around the country, actually some were overseas, doctors, nurses, people who have adopted children, people who have had abortions, the whole spectrum. And what he has done with that documentary and the courage that he had to do that. I have no idea how I made the cut. Obviously, you people are probably trying to figure that out as well. But it's Saturday night, 10 o'clock, EWTN documentary. So one last question, and then we'll call it a night. Anything else?
Statistics have shown, Jeff, that abortion has been the leading cause of death in the world for the last 5 years. Why do you
Yeah, I don't know if everyone here knows this, but the leading cause of death in the world, in 2023, in 2022, in 2021, in 2020, and in 2019 has been abortion. This year, depending on who you speak to, whether it's the World Health Organization, and I know that's not, the most reputable of organizations, they believe that 70 million babies have been killed. So, Violetta, it's a very unusual experience when you're able to embrace another man, especially one like 60 years before that has had an abortion. Because we recognize that we have dehumanized the woman that was in our lives. We recognize that we've devalued that woman. We recognize that we participated in a grave mortal offense. A grave mortal offense. And you can't undo that. So what is it going to take? You know what it's going to take? Edmund Burke is an 18th century Irish philosopher. He said, all that evil requires to triumph is for good men to do nothing. I wonder what William Wallace would have said on the battlefield if he was here today. If William Wallace from Braveheart, the 13th century Scotsman who looked at the army across from him, they had clubs and knives, the Scottish, they were like from the 3rd century. And they were looking across the field at the English, the British army. They had cavalry, they had archers, they had all the modern warfare. It was an unthinkable battle. The Scots had 1,000 people, the British had 4,000 or 5,000. But the Scots had had enough. They had had enough of being taken advantage of. They had had enough of doing nothing. So what did William Wallace say? To rally his troops before they got into battle, he said, fight, men, and you may die. Run home, and you may live for a little while. But would you trade all the days from that one to this one for the opportunity to come back to this battlefield and tell our enemies that they can take our lives, but they can't take our freedom? It's going to take men, Violetta, and I hate the cameras following you around because you can't undo that, although it can get edited. It's going to take men to grow up. It's going to take men like the man that I saw in the confessional yesterday, in the line for the confessional yesterday. A man in his early 30s, getting ready to get right with God. And you know who he had with him? He had his little 4-year-old son looking up to Dad with a big smile on his face, because he knew Dad had the humility necessary to stand before the Almighty and get set free from his captivity. And at St. Paul's, they have dual confessionals, and there's a window in the middle of the door. Do you know that 4-year-old boy, he could see his dad in the confessional. He had his face pinned against the mirror, looking at his dad. And I'm telling you, he couldn't have been prouder of his dad. But it's going to take real men, I think. Women have had enough of, like that 16-year-old girl. It breaks my heart every time I tell that story. Because we've dehumanized women, right? We've devalued them. This is for the guys in the bleachers and the girls in the bleachers. Girls, listen. The second holiest place on this earth, you know what the first holiest place is on this earth? Any guesses? Go ahead, take a guess. It's not Jerusalem. It's not Our Lady of Fatima, not Lourdes. The holiest place on this planet is any church or chapel that has a tabernacle in it. You got it right, didn't you? That's the holiest place on earth. You know what the second holiest place on earth is? Your womb. And because men are cowards and they want to test drive every damn vehicle in the parking lot before they buy one, they've made you turn your womb into a cemetery. And don't let them do that. Do not let them do that. You are a child of God, and you deserve to be treated with dignity and integrity, not taken advantage of. It's going to take men to be real men, to be real men. That's what it'll take to stop abortion in the United States. That's what it'll take. One last question, and then we're out of here, people. It's 8 o'clock. Mr. Bennett, how are you, sir?
First, thank you for everything you've shared with us tonight. But secondly, and this is maybe more of a vision for me than it is a question, but I listened to you name your child, and that meant something to me when you said it. Spiritual adoption of that child, spiritual godparents of that child. What about an initiative to support you and your family by being godparents of that child?
Yeah. John asked the question of naming my child. I can tell you this, and forgive me, I've gone a little bit over. I apologize, please. I know your time is precious. I can tell you this. I will answer that question this way. I remember being in the chapel at Corpus Christi. No, it was Our Lady of the Rosary. And this was about the time that God blessed us with our beloved daughter in the back, who is a gem beyond imagination. But my wife and I tried to get pregnant again, and we couldn't. And I remember being mad at God. You talk about getting mad at God. I was sitting in the chapel that day, and I said, you know, God, you don't have any more tricks in the book. I had treated him like a vending machine. He gave me a daughter. I said, okay, God, I don't need you anymore. I said, you couldn't give me a son? I mean, come on now. Every time I look out the back window of my house, I see the neighbor playing with his son, and it kills me, John. You know? So that day I said, God, you don't have any more tricks in your book? The miracle worker, you can work miracles for everybody, but you can't work miracles for me? And I tell you, I got a slap in the face that day. I can't even explain it to you. He said, you do have a son, Jeff. And he's standing right next to me. And you know what? His name's Jonathan Andrew. And we love you very much. And so, John, I pray, there's a prayer that I pray every day. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, I love you very much. I beg you to spare the life of the unborn child that is spiritually adopted. Just in case anybody didn't notice, I know that Jesus won the war. I know that. We all know that. But ladies and gentlemen, we are losing the battle, just FYI. You go ahead and chase your little 3-inch by 6-inch pieces of paper all damn day long and buy you a bigger house that ain't going to make you happy so that you can buy another bigger house that ain't going to make you happy so that you can buy another bigger car. But I tell you, when I stand before the Maker, a broken freaking man, I want to be able to look at him and I want to be able to say, you know, Jesus, I took everything that you gave me, which wasn't much, but I laid it out on the battlefield. It's going to take men and women to stop being preoccupied with climbing the ladders of success, or I'm too old to do this, or I'm too young to do that, and step into the battlefield, people. Fight for something for honor, for integrity, for dignity, for your dignity. 150,000 babies today, people. 50 million babies a year will get murdered. And we pretend like there isn't a problem in the United. Everyone wants to focus on idiot politicians as their beacons for slings and arrows. I feel obligated to say this, and I'm running over, and again, forgive me. I can tell you a man who's not here tonight, and thanks be to God because I get to share the story. He's given every story you've heard. I've gotten permission from the people, so please understand that. But this man we had a discussion one day, and he said, Jeff, he said, he's in his 60s, early 60s. He said, at the age of 51 years old, my mother, who was, I think, whatever she was, 70, 75, my mother told me that I was the product of a rape. Can you imagine that? A 51-year-old man figuring out that he was the product of a rape? When I look at that situation, I think about the good that this man has done for the last 20 years of his life, fighting for the cause of good, fighting against evil, helping people. Yet we have politicians that call themselves Catholic, and they say, oh, these are the exceptions to abortion. What the heck do you mean an exception? That man isn't an exception. He wasn't the one that raped his mother. So he should pay the penalty for that? Brothers and sisters, I cannot thank you enough for bearing with me for the last hour and 20 minutes. I thank you for showing up. I thank you for what you do for Mother Church. It's an honor to share with you. It's a privilege to share with you. And thank you so much.